I made the biggest mistake of my life. I accidentally made an absolutely huge donation to the wrong organization. I only meant to give them $10,000, but I gave them all my money for a down payment on a house, and they're refusing to give it back. Here is what I'm going to do. I'm currently at a point in my life where I never have been before. I currently boast of $500,000. I believe that this was achieved because I'm what my family has always called stingy. Though I think they're right. I'm not stingy, I'm only frugal. There's a difference. My frugality has seen right from childhood days. My parents gave birth to my brother and I while growing up. My brother was the kind of individual who would carelessly throw money around. He did not mind paying a huge amount for something he felt was valuable. I, on the other hand, I was very intentional about every dime that left my hand. I tried getting things of value for cheaper price, and I was really good with words. It came as no surprise to my parents when I informed them of my desire to study marketing in college. During my college days, I would often take advantage of the freshman students in my department by making a compilation of the previous year's examination questions, and I resold it to them with the same answers containing therein. They always bought it, thanks to my mouth, which I called my bargaining power. After college, I quickly knew I wanted to delve into full-scale marketing, and I began looking for opportunities to exploit. I was employed by a company that produced textile materials, and though they had placed me in a probation for 3 months just to see my performance, they quickly made me a full-time employee before the month was up, as I'd quickly given them a rise in 20% sales. And less than a year after, I'd resumed working for the reputable firm. It was clear to them that I was a key member as I closed deals no one else could. I was given a salary raise coupled with the bonuses which I was entitled to after every sale. I never looked like the money that I was making. I was very tight-fisted in my spending. Thank goodness I was, because if I lived the quote normal bachelor's life, which was clubbing and womanizing, then I would not be boasting of the amount in my account. I met Debby some months ago, and we've been dating for a while now. But though we're cool, most folks were of the opinion that it was a bad combination, and I get where they're coming from. Debby, well, she's a lawyer, a top-notch one of that. While I was known for closing deals, she was known for closing cases. Debby was the kind of lawyer who could convince the courtroom that black was white or sky was red. Being a marketeer who was frugal about spending meant I was not willing to get lesser value for my money, and having a bad A lawyer by my side meant that nobody could cheat me and get away with it. So why people may see us as a bad combination, Debby was actually the perfect one for me. What's up, everybody? Mr. Reddito here. So there's quite a few updates on this story. Update number 1, it came out 2 weeks after the original post, so let's go ahead and jump into update number 1. So, it's been 2 weeks since I've last posted. My love life and career have been going really well. As a matter of fact, Debby and I are beginning to consider marriage. Yeah, I proposed to her, and we've been house hunting for a while now. I took her to meet with family who I'd initially informed about Debby and the fact that I planned on getting married to her. I got to my parents' home that day and my cousin Pamela was there. Pamela and I have never really gotten along right from our childhood days when the whole extended family lived together. We always had issues because she was the kind of person who loves sticking her big nose up your business and wants to take what belonged to you by any means of her disposal. She's greedy. A big thanks to my frugal nature, I would not let her get away with my property. Pamela, or Pam Pam, as she fondly called, ran an NGO that cared for the ailing or suffering masses. I believe they have a goal of reaching those in abject poverty, so she claims. She had been running her NGO successfully for about 6 years, and I can say from things which I see that it was around that time that she's accumulated most of her wealth. She was somewhat of a popular figure of world bodies, and individuals would often offer her grants and make free will donations, which were usually massive whenever she reported a group of person in Africa starving to death. I would learn of Pam Pam's reasons for being at my parents' house after she witnessed me present Debby to my parents as my girlfriend, whom I've intended to get married to in the near future. My parents were getting along with Debby, and Pamela just sat there looking for the opportunity to cause problems. Something that seemed to happen wherever she was. It was when Debby informed my parents that she was a lawyer that Pamela began voicing out trash. She sarcastically asked if I was going to continue helping out my parents once I get married to a lawyer, who could easily convince me that it was not my right to give my parents any money. Before I could even react to that absurd statement, she added that it was not really going to be difficult for Debby to make me withhold my money from my parents, as I just needed a little research to do so because I was already so stingy. Although Pamela had made that statement with a smirk to portray it was a joke, I knew deep down that she just wanted to anger me. I refused to fall for her tricks. I smiled and noted that my parents were definitely my responsibility, and Debby would never advise me against helping my own parents. Debby just kind of awkwardly, quietly sat there observing. The moment I mentioned the fact that Debby would not let me abandon my family and those that matter to me, Pamela pulled out an invitation card and handed it to me. She was apparently planning a form of family dinner, and that was why she was at my parents' place. This was obviously going to be a big one, as she had been going around inviting the whole extended family group. I decided within me that I was not going to go because she would only use it as an avenue to raise funds for her NGO, who were trying to, quote, rescue lives. However, I did not outright just reject the invitation. I informed her that I would see if my work schedule would permit me. Debby and I left my parents' home that day, and while we were on the way, I disclosed to her that we would be sitting that family dinner out because Pamela was all about trouble. But Debby, well, she didn't welcome the idea. She said that though my cousin had left a distasteful impression on her, this was an opportunity for her to bond with my parents and equally make them know that she would not cut their son off from their lives. Well, when you have a girlfriend who's a lawyer, you best believe that you would never win an argument, right? She had a point, but so did I. The argument continued for a few days, and it was quite a serious one because Debby refused talking to me. After, I could not help with the whole malice and all, I finally called Debby just to make peace. I told her that we were about starting our lives and we needed all the money which we could get. Going to a family dinner that was a facade for a fundraising would require that we donated like everyone else, and considering the fact that we were housing hunting, it wasn't the best time to get generous, right? Debby insisted by saying that we could put in our little donation in an envelope. We did not need to announce to the world what we were giving. So, I finally agreed to go to dinner just for the peace to reign. Hey guys, Mr. Reddito again. Update number 2. Here it is. It's a few days after the last update. I hope you guys are having a great day. Let's get into it. It's been a few days since I last updated, and Debby and I are currently on our way home from the family dinner. 2 days ago, our house finally agent called just to let us know that they've gotten a nice house that was put up for sale. One which, according to him, matched our desire to the T. He sent us pictures, and the house, it was truly belifting. He, however, informed us that the information which he got was that other folks were equally canvassing for the property. He said that if Debby and I were to get the house, we needed to visit it today, which coincided with the family dinner, and equally make the down payment of about $250,000. The house was going to cost a whopping sum of $500,000 US, but we could pay in parts. The first of which was half the money up front, and now Debby and I have followed a financial advice and invested part of our money in the stock exchange market, and we had just the amount of the initial down payment, though we could raise the remaining in 2 months' time. This would mean that we would practically be living from hand to mouth, and doing our best to be as frugal as possible till when the stock market favored us, or till the month's end when we would both receive our salaries. It was okay by us, we were willing to take the risk, this was our future house anyways. Debby and I visit the house early today with the mindset of making the initial payment of $250,000 that we did have packaged in an envelope, but it was a far cry from what we seen in the pictures. There was no way I was going to pay such a huge amount for a property of less value. Debby and I both left the house agent and the house and headed straight for the family dinner. We had before then put in $10,000 in a different envelope. It was going to be our own donation. I purposefully used $10 bills so that it would seem as though it was larger than that. The both envelopes contained the down payment of the house and the donation were both in Debbie's bag. We got to the family dinner at the extended family house, and it was exactly what I had thought it would be. Relatives putting up a smiley face and all, and after the whole greeting and reunion, it was finally time for what I've been anticipating all along. Pamela now took the stage. I knew that we were in for a long night of donations when I saw her bring a projector to a family dinner. She began by thanking the family for saving lives and all. She then showed us slides of children in East Africa who were being fed and all. She alluded it to the money which we had initially donated, and soon after the slides of children being fed, Pamela started showing us children who were suffering a kind of skin disease which I can't remember the name. Pamela ended her speech by saying those children were depending on our generosity for survival. Now, I'd seen Pamela in time past give her fundraising speech, but I can swear that she's upped her game. People began writing checks left and right and packaging donations into an envelope. But before making their donation, most of them gave speeches where they praised Pamela for living a selfless life, a life that puts others ahead of herself. It got to my turn, and even though I never wanted to, I knew that it would make me look stingy and make everyone misjudge Debbie, something I didn't want. So I simply put my hand into Debbie's bag and pulled out the envelope, and just handed it over to Pamela. I refused giving a speech because to begin with, I never wanted there to be there in the first place. The night ended very well, and I can confidently say that Pamela raised enough money to save the world. I just hoped it would be a while before we'd be gathered together again to be emotionally blackmailed into saving the universe. Update number 3, 1 week later. Well, that night, when Debbie and I returned from the family dinner, we discovered that even a very costly mistake. The mistake was literally costly. I'd given the envelope that contained the initial down payment of $250,000 for the house which we were no longer taking. What we had left was the $10,000 which we initially wanted to donate. I wanted to blame Debbie for the whole thing. If she had just listened to me and we stayed back, there would have been no room for such a mistake that we just made. I quickly picked up my phone and tried reaching out to Pamela, but she was not answering. We dropped her a voicemail to get back to us as soon as she could, but we were still not at ease. It was then that we decided I dropped her a message to let her know that we had made a mistake with our donation. If not for the distance and the fact that it was already late at night, I would have driven back to the family house or wherever Pamela was to demand for the money. All the same, I decided that I had to see Pamela first thing in the morning. Debbie and I could barely wait for the day to break, and we did not sleep much all night as we eagerly anticipated Pamela's feedback concerning the text message and voicemails which we left her. If she had replied, then I would have probably not had paid her any visit in the morning, but her reply never came. Debbie and I initially felt that her silence was actually a result of the fact that she must have had a very busy day, and so could not afford the time to go through her phone's messages and call logs. But as soon as we changed our opinion, I received a message from Pamela's phone number, which I'd equally sent a text earlier on. It wasn't the message I wanted to read. As a matter of fact, it was a thank you message where the sender, who was obviously Pamela, was thanking us on behalf of the African children. She said the world was becoming a better place because of our generosity. Trash! It was crystal clear that Debbie and that Pamela had seen our text messages but was bent on avoiding us, as she was not keen on returning the money. So, I drove down to Pamela's house that morning, and though it was quite a distance, I arrived there in a few minutes. I guess with a needed motivation, anything's possible. I was told by Pamela's cleaner that she'd left for the office, the building where she used as her NGO headquarters. I was on my way driving down to her office when Debbie called me to inform that the NGO had made a public post where they thanked everybody for their generosity. The NGO specifically thanked Debbie and I for donating the highest in the previous night. I was so mad when Debbie informed me about it. I knew it was all part of Pamela's plan to guilt trip me into leaving the money for them. but I refused to be emotionally blackmailed. I barged into her office where I met her sipping wine and taking cookies. For someone who was keen on saving the Earth and its inhabitants, she appeared rather less concerned. Immediately she saw me and tried playing dumb. She began by wanting to thank me with a well-thought catchphrase which she's been using for a long time. But I stopped her dead in her tracks. I told her that what I've given the previous night was definitely a mistake, and I was there to rectify it. As a matter of fact, I had the other envelope which contained the $10,000. Pamela smiled just like a villain in a play would. She told me that the donations made were irreversible as it's been entered into the records of the NGO, and I and Debby had already been publicly acknowledged for being so generous. I wasn't buying her excuse. I cared less about public acknowledgement. I just wanted my money back. I told her to take it off the record or correct the record or do whatever she needs to do, but do the right thing. Pamela retained her smiley face and told me that the NGO had a no-refund policy. I'm sure she must have made it up there because it sounded ridiculous. Maybe because I was the one who wanted my money back. Pamela did not want to give me any further chance to speak. She immediately noted that she had a meeting to attend with some well-meaning donors that morning. Someone who knew moments ago was lazily seated in that office, sipping wine and eating cookies like a fool. I was forced to leave her office, and while I left, I could hear her say that there was still room to save the Earth and its inhabitants just in case I wanted to do so with the envelope that contained the other $10,000. Well, as some of you might can guess, my anger at this moment got to its peak, but I did not turn back. I knew there had to be a way somehow. I got home where I met Debby anxiously waiting my arrival. She had not gone to work that morning for obvious reasons, and I told Debby all that had transpired, and she immediately left for Pamela's office. I went after her to stop her from doing anything stupid, but Debby got to Pamela's office to find her still sipping wine and eating cookies. Someone who claimed to have a meeting to attend, huh? Debby demanded that Pamela refunded us the money, and as a matter of fact, Debby told her that they were no longer going to donate a dime. Neither the $250,000 nor the $10,000. Pamela lashed out at Debby, calling her all sorts of names. She said that Debby was a selfish and manipulative woman, just as she had earlier suspected, and it is what it is. I got to the office just in time to stop both women from fighting. I didn't want my future wife fighting her future in-law, as it could become a problem at our relationship. I took Debby home, but that was after she threatened to sue Pamela and her firm for defrauding us if she did not return our money within the next 3 days. What's up, guys? Mr. Reddito here. Update number 4 came out 2 weeks after the last update, and things are about to get wild with the NGO. Here it is. My last update was 2 weeks ago, and my girlfriend's currently at war with Pamela. After Debby and I left Pamela's office, I knew that I would not let my girlfriend sue my cousin. But I wanted Pamela to believe I would, so she would give me our demands and return the money. I was in for a shocker. Debby had given Pamela a 3-day deadline, but we were surprised when the second day there was a public post calling us out. Pamela had made another post where she began telling the public that Debby and I were deceivers. She claimed that we had given the money just to be seen as generous individuals, and after the public acknowledgement, we were now demanding that the NGO refunded us the money. And we had even threatened to sue her and the NGO and take them to court. Pamela, well, she was a snake. There was a public outburst and individuals began calling Debby and I names. Pamela even went as far as trying to make us look horrible in the midst of the whole family. I'm not just talking about my parents and my brother, I mean the whole extended family. My family summoned Debby and I knew that they obviously would tear us to shreds for putting the family name out there for wrong reasons, even though it was actually Pamela who dragged us to the public just to make everyone speak against us. Well, my family did not see it that way. To them, Pamela was their little angel sent to the rescue of the little world, and she was doing a really good job of it, huh? My family began by saying that I had disappointed them because of a lady. Pamela had actually told them that Debby was the one controlling my actions by subtly manipulating me. They demanded there and then that Debby stayed away from me, and even though my parents were not in support of their demands, they just kept quiet to watch on. In our defense, I told everyone present that the money we'd mistakenly given was meant for the house, which was planning on buying in the same envelope. I told them that we had initially planned on giving just $10,000. My explanation seemed useless to them. The only thing that held on to was that Pamela had told them. When the heat was too much, my father finally stood up and claimed that they were simply trying to be unfair to Debby and I. He told them that the willingness on our part to let go of $10,000 was reason enough to believe me. $10,000 was a lot of money. I was thankful that my parents could see through Pamela's game, and my father informed them that right from the day I brought Debby to introduce them, he and his wife, Pamela, who would coincidentally just be there, began attacking Debby for no just course. My father equally noted that it was Pamela who had made a public post about the whole issue. When could I have easily just called a meeting like this and the family settled a dispute? My father rightfully noted that Pamela owed Debby and I an apology for dragging us out in public, who saw us as untrustworthy. Something that could actually affect the career of both of us. I was really pleased that my father was here, and my happiness escalated when he stated clearly that nobody had the right to decide who I was to marry, and the family had no right to ask me to break up with Debby. Guys, there was an uproar after my father was done speaking. Few people supported him while the majority stood behind Pamela and insisted that Debby and I would not get a refund. It was at that point that my father asked that both he, my mother, Debby, and I left the place. Debby was angered, but it was not just because of the money. She was vexed because of the way Pamela had slandered her image before the public and before my family. She decided that she was going to sue Pamela for slander, and this time it was not a threat. She actually meant it, and not even I could stop her. I had to inform my parents about her plan, and they called her to dissuade her from doing so. It was a family affair, and even though the matter had been brought to the public by Pamela, we still needed to accord to the family some privacy. Debby agreed with my parents and had said, but she'd rather asked if it was okay if she made a public post to debunk the allegations which Pamela had made against her. At least by doing so, she could save her face and career, which had been put online because of Pamela. My parents agreed that it was a good idea. Debby finally made her public post in the form of a video where she rehearsed all that happened to the public. She noted that putting in the wrong envelope was a mistake on our part and not a ploy to present ourselves as something which we were not. She went further to say that though the amount was basically all we had at hand, she and I had decided to let it go because it had raised some dust. Debby, somewhere in her video, took a jab at Pamela, just as a seasoned lawyer would anyways. She called Pamela, quote, the lady with a heart of gold who equally had pockets full of gold. She made indirect statements to the fact that Pamela had a luxurious house, luxurious cars, and her net worth was probably on the high side. Yet, she would rather use the gold of others to save the earth. Debby finally rounded up asking a rhetorical question. If the lady with the heart of gold had pockets full of gold, which she did, why was she not taking the lead in helping the poor from her personal finances? Alright guys, Mr. Edito here. That's a very good point by Debby. There's one final update for this story. It came out 3 whole months later. Everyone in the comment section thought that they were just going to be left on a cliffhanger until OP drops update number 5. It's been 3 months since I've last posted, and this will probably be my final post as matters have finally taken a different turn. Debby's video had quite the impact. It was then that it dawned on the public, who'd always been singing Pamela's praise, that their angel was living a very luxurious life while claiming to be passionate about saving those in distress. Everyone began asking questions. Debby had finally opened the eyes of the public to a glaring reality. Pamela may not be who they thought that her to be. Pamela and the rest of the extended family reacted negatively towards the video. They began trying to reach Debby and I, but we purposely made ourselves inaccessible. After days of failing to reach us, they charged their focus to my parents and antagonizing them for not bringing their son under control. My parents are not the ones to be moved by threats at all, and they simply ignored them. Pamela did not keep quiet. She tried salvaging the situation by claiming that Debby and I wanted to tarnish her image because she had exposed us for who we truly were. Well, the next few weeks proved who the guilty party was between Pamela and us. Barely 3 weeks after the whole incident, an official investigation into Pamela's source of wealth was opened by the government body in charge of taxes in the state. Pamela had evaded tax ever since she began acquiring her wealth, and that's because she had no tangible job that could give her the money to sustain her lifestyle. After a few days of the investigation, it was discovered Pamela had been using the NGO as a means to enrich herself. Over 60% of the relief funds, which were donated by worldwide bodies and well-meaning individuals, were sidelined by Pamela. Most of the times when she claimed there was a child dying somewhere in Africa, she was just trying to enrich herself. Well, one surprising fact is that Pamela's not married and has never been rumored to have a lover whatsoever. And so it's just absurd that one would go through a lot just to secure wealth for herself alone. Well, the news made a very large buzz, as you could guess, when it broke. Newspaper headlines talked about the angel who was exploiting the poverty of the poor to secure gold for the rich. It was quite unfortunate for her that at the end of her scheme coming, when she decided to mess with Debby and I. She was soon charged for court for fraud, tax evasion, and a few others. If Debby had slammed her around this time with her own lawsuit of libel, then she was certain to win the case because the circumstances were now in her favor completely. Pamela was sentenced to 20 years in prison once it was all said and done, and the whole of her property was forfeited to the government, who would sell it and reimburse it to the NGO. The public, who had sang her praise for a very long time, were now angry that she got a prison sentence of just 20 years. Debby was now the new hero of the public. People began to spontaneously call the government out to refund her the money that Pamela had refused returning. The government finally yielded, and they repaid Debby and I all the money, with an extra $250,000 for the damages, which Pamela had done to our image and career. The compensation from the government came from the right time, because Debby and I had actually found a house that was to our tasting, but we needed money to cover the cost. We wasted no time in securing the house, and my level of productivity has picked up at work, as I'd not really been able to close several deals ever since the whole drama started with Pamela. Debby and I got married last month in a small wedding ceremony that saw just our both parents and a few colleagues present from work. My extended family had cut themselves from us in shame, and that was a good thing, because neither Debby nor I wanted anything to do with them. Their angel was wasting away in a jail cell where she would be spending quite some time. And I can bet any amount that if the issue should be further investigated, there would be findings that they had partook of the money which their angel embezzled. Well, that's probably no longer my concern. Debby's pregnant, and I'm soon going to be a father. Twins, a boy and a girl. My life's currently perfect, and there's nothing else that I could ever wish for. Wow, this story was intense. I have one very specific question for you guys. What would you do if you were in OP's position and you get scammed by your cousin Pamela? I also want to know, do you think Pamela deserved what happened at the end of this story? Let's do a quick shout out to Debby, though. Type Debby in the comment section if you think that she was an absolute hero in all this. Without Debby, there's no way they would have caught Pamela and put her behind bars. I think that they would have been painted the bad guys if Debby wasn't so quick thinking. Much more quick thinking than her husband. But anyways, let me know your thoughts, guys. Drop them in the comment section. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name's Mr. Reddito. If you're new here, I read stories every single day of some of the most dramatic, binge-worthy stories that you've ever heard. Guys, don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more daily stories, and I will see you guys in the next one.